Hey there, it's Carrie. So excited to bring to you our next expert for the Silvernest Community Development Leadership Series. You are in for a significant and big treat. I'm delighted to introduce Elizabeth White. She's the author of the book 55 Unemployed and Faking Normal. You'll be able to watch her TED Talk attached to this presentation. Her book is riveting. Her story is extraordinary. So let me give you a quick background about her. Elizabeth White, she is an author and an aging solutions advocate for older adults facing uncertain work and financial insecurity. Most recently, she served as special advisor to the executive director of Senior Service America. Before joining SSA, she was the COO of a mid-sized nonprofit focusing on improving economic conditions in Africa. She's also an entrepreneur, having co-founded and led a chain of decorative home stores in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. And she began her career in international development at the World Bank. Elizabeth has an extraordinary educational background. She has her MBA from Harvard Business School, a master's in international studies from Johns Hopkins University, and a BS in political science from Oberlin. She also grew up as a self-described army brat and lived in various countries in Europe and North Africa. Her story is a story that represents everybody. She has a clear perspective on the challenges that many adults are facing today to be able to financially piece together the next stages of life. And that for lots of folks, this idea of this idyllic third act of running around the world is not realistic. And that since the economic recession hit, a lot of older adults have been struggling to make ends meet. And no one's talking about it. And she wrote a beautiful, heartfelt essay describing her experience. And that essay went viral, which led to the book, which led to a level of activism that she's been bringing to help uncover this underbelly of what it's really like getting old in America and managing and making ends meet and pretending like everything's okay. And how she solves some of those issues by writing this book and creating resiliency circles. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. I was riveted by your book. I've been listening to it in the car, and I literally was driving home, staring down the highway, going, oh my God, you're speaking a truth. You are speaking something without apology. Just, this is how it is. And let's wake up, people, because this is what's going on. And that was what was so brilliant about it, is that it wasn't couched in anything. So it just could go right in. So the way that you wrote it was the same way that we could receive it, just straight in. Rare, but well done. And I think now you've seen the reverberations of how this has impacted people. The TED Talk has been explosive, and the book is getting out and about. And so I love that you have been sharing this message with all walks of life to help demonstrate that this is a flatline experience. So, you know, you had shared in a PBS NewsHour interview that you had both talked to factory workers in Tennessee and then MIT retirees. And they were all in the same boat. So this is not about any section of our society. This is going across all sectors. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your reflections. That now you've been collecting stories, that initially this was your story. You thought you were the only one. And now you're hearing all these stories in your basket. So what is your current thinking that based on what you've heard?
So there are lots of different aspects. One aspect is that there are so many of us that we're actually a very powerful demographic segment. And as long as we think we're alone, we're siloed and isolated, we don't actually use the power that we have to change institutions and to force our legislator to pay attention to what's happening to us. So I think, so that's one piece of it. And even if you look at our spend, people over 50 in this country spend $7 trillion a year. We're huge drivers of the economy. when you look at how much we spend on consumer goods or on apparel or on cars, we're a big part of that.
Yeah.
So what happens when we don't have work and we can't spend money? You know, I can take my coffee in a thermos. I can keep my 8-year-old Chevy. I don't have to buy clothes from you. I don't have to eat in your restaurants. So that on the private sector business side, there's not this connection between, if we aren't working, we can't spend money.
Right.
And the thing is now, it's not like in 1935 when Social Security was introduced and you were going to die basically at 65. You know,
Right.
so you collect your benefit for a few years and then be dead.
Right.
If we're in good health, we could live to 80 or longer. So that's
Yes.
a really long runway to have enough money. So moving the needle on the age discrimination in the workplace that forces so many of us out into the street or into jobs where we are underemployed and cannot support ourselves, that's something that's fixable. And I would really like to see much more attention to that. I am trying to create what I call a casserole of interesting work. And that's what many of us will do. So you might be doing, I'm staying right now with a friend who has an Airbnb business. So that's one of her, sort of streams of income in her casserole. She has a tenant who lives downstairs from her. That's another one. She does a little bit of consulting, etc. So all of us are going to be putting together these casseroles. Because if we don't have the work, we're going to see elder poverty at levels that we haven't seen since the Depression.
Yes. Yes. I think that is such an excellent point. And one of the other tangential and really difficult and overwhelming components of what you just described, that when there is financial insecurity or financial cliffs of some level that you're facing as you're getting older, you're not engaging in the activities that you normally would. Not going out to the movies with your girlfriends. You're not going to the health club. You're not going shopping with your girlfriends here and there and buying a few things. You're not doing that stuff. And we're watching this corollary rise in data that's showing the health impacts of social isolation and loneliness. So that has been one of the core topics that each of the subject matter experts have been commenting on for the Silver Nest Community Leader Program is social isolation and loneliness. And some of that is driven by financial insecurity at scale, that you're just not going out as much because you can't afford it. So if you're not going out even to have the cup of coffee with your girlfriend at Starbucks, you're home. And you've talked a little bit about some things that you've done that are free that force you to get out, like going to the drum circle on Sundays. But I'd love to hear your perception about what you've seen in that impact, that there's a sense of shame that you have by not having the resources. So that's difficult enough. And then there's this isolation that you're just staying home and you're not getting out. So how are you seeing impacting people?
So you've seen in my book, I talk about resilience circles.
Yes.
And my circle of friends, particularly women friends, I think, what's her name? Is her name Pfeiffer? She wrote the book Ophelia.
Yes, Mary Pfeiffer, yes.
Mary Pfeiffer. And she says that women are our mental health insurance. Women friends are our mental health insurance. And I thought that was so powerful, because what has saved me is connecting with women friends. I have one friend, I meet with her every Saturday at 10 a.m. and we go to a little coffee shop that's like the neighborhood living room. And it's just a place for me to share honestly with her, and she shares honestly with me what's happening. because it's crazy making, really, to be here alone, not talking to anyone, taking on board all the negative, sort of feedback. You must be a loser if you've landed here, or you're irresponsible, etc. And the reason I talked about these resilience circles in the book is because we do need some place to vent. We do need to talk to other people who can mirror back to us what we're experiencing, but who may also be a little bit further ahead, may have grappled with some things that we're currently grappled with, or who can give us information or resources that we don't yet have. Because if we are in despair, we're not going to use the power we have. We're not going to call out and call into account, our politicians, our institutions to address this. So I wanted to write a book that dealt with the meantime. So before, that's why I say the cavalry's not coming. Before, these really long-term solutions that may not even to affect our lifetimes, we've got to manage now. And I also try to make the point, this is not some pesky little boomer problem.
Yes.
Gen Xers don't have pensions either. Millennials don't have pensions either. So in a way, we are making the path. We are grappling with these issues that generations that are in lockstep behind us are going to have to grapple with. But we can't do it if we are isolated, alone, in despair, and not joining together with the power that we actually have. So I was trying to, with my book, to write a book that speaks to where we are currently. And it's hard to write that book in a way that is accessible to people, because I knew when I was in the worst of this, some really densely written, wonky book, I couldn't get through it. I needed to see myself in the pages. And when I looked at what was out there, I didn't see a book that did that part, plus frame what was happening, and then try to capture, well, here are some resources that are available.
Yes, absolutely. Truly, that I think is why I found you to be so exceptional. And we're so excited to have you be a part of this conversation, that you're not only calling what is happening right now, but you're also looking ahead at these adaptive moves that everyone's going to have to make in order to function. And by default, some of the things that you're seeing happening is this gig economy is sort of blowing up, and it's providing some opportunities for work. Airbnb, Silver Nest, driving for Uber, driving for Lyft, DoorDash, driving for Amazon. There's these, you have to take a sidestep to find the kind of work that you need, and it's coming in something no one would have ever imagined before. So many things that have been evolving in the last, 5-10 years in the gig economy were like science fiction, that no one would ever take a ride from somebody in their car, right? Like no one would ever imagine that idea. Why would I get in your car to go somewhere? I would only take a cab, right? So we had this mindset that you could only get in a yellow taxi cab to go somewhere. But now I can go on my phone and somebody comes and picks me up. And often it's a super fun experience because you get to talk to people and they talk about their lives, and it's kind of a cool experience. It's sort of satisfying, and off you go. So these solutions are beginning to layer in that not only provide work, but opportunities to get us out. So I'd love to begin with that and hear your thinking about some of these gig economy solutions that are coming up. And from there, I want to move into a little bit specifically about housing and Silver Nest. But let's just start at this bigger picture of these multiple solutions that are starting to change how we function in our everyday life.
We know that there are pros and cons. Okay, we know, I say, is it the sharing economy or the sharing the crumbs economy? There's definitely opportunities. There are many women friends of mine are surviving on this gig economy, particularly like on the sort of Airbnb and this opportunity to. I think that their fastest growing segment now is women over 50. So we have it is an option, but they're not the safeguards that we want. There is no workers' compensation. There is no unemployment. There's kind of all of the other sort of safeguards that are built in have not yet are not yet in effect on those kinds of jobs. So I see it as a strategy. It's part of a strategy. It's part of your casserole of creating income. It's not the only solution, and it's not an area that cannot be further improved.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of where I land there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that a silver lining in what is happening is because many of us are going to have more modest incomes, we're having to look at the economics of aging, particularly around consumption. Mm-hmm. So the mindless consumerism that, it's hard to escape in America, we're having to really think about what do we need to be content and happy.
So let's chat a little bit about the solution that Silvernest is attempting to solve. That Silvernest was founded with the founder, Wendy Burkhart, realizing that her mom became widowed and had never lived alone and needed both companionship and steady revenue that she could count on. And yet the idea of going on Craigslist or, using the current methodologies to find a housemate was overwhelming, unsafe, and probably not that palatable. And there are those who may be playing in the Airbnb domain where they have an extra room and they're putting it up on Airbnb. But then there's also the hassle factor of flipping all the time. Flipping and changing the sheets and getting a new person and handling the website and the feedback. And that can become tiring for some people to keep doing that. Whereas Silvernest sort of offering, pick the one person that's matched to you based on your criteria that you probably would be compatible with and have them stay with you. So you build a relationship and you have monthly income that you can count on that's put in your bank. And over time, you also then get this companionship that it's someone that you're matched with that just becomes this comfortable old shoe in your home. And then you have a company that's looking out for you, making sure if you have mediation needs, it's there. If you need the rent completely withdrawn from one bank account and put into the other so you don't have to ask, they do that for you. So they attempted to really look into, as you had said, like the challenges in managing these things and providing a solution. I think that's why they've been heralded as a leader in their industry, because they're trying to not just make a quick buck, but they're trying to solve a problem, both for the financial side and this companionship and social side. So I'd just love to hear your comments or thoughts about that. And why it is that a lot of folks are so reluctant to even consider these alternative solutions for just because they're not used to it or they haven't thought about it before.
I love Silvernest. They're one of the resources that I mentioned in my book. And I think for all the reasons that you've said. Now, I think the reason that we are sometimes reluctant is we live in a culture that says independence is best. Being on your own is a sign of success. Being able to, be self-supporting, etc. I was at a dinner party recently, and it was an Italian-American woman, and she was talking about her 27-year-old living at home. So immediately the whole room goes into, failure to launch, what's wrong with him? And she's like, wait a minute. He is a great guy. He is interesting. He's working. Why should he go out and spend $3,000 on rent or, have some sort of micro apartment with 4 people living with him? Why can't he live with me? And so we're in a culture that says everybody needs their own lawnmower. We all need our own mixer. We all need our own car. This is the consumerism that has heretofore driven this economy. So we think, and we tell our young people, to be successful, you need to get out of the house and live on your own. And, you know, we're not, I lived in Italy for many years on Brad. We were posted there. And so I saw these Italian families where the great grandmother's there and the grandmother's there and everybody's living together. And even in this country now, we see this huge increase in multi-generational households. It used to just be immigrant families, but since 2009, it's all kinds of families seeing the benefits of living. If you are someone, though, who maybe your family is not nearby, and you have extra room in your house, you're a woman, we're all afraid that we'll get Son of Sam coming in with us, and how do you vet, or we'll get some deadbeat in there we can't get out. So Silvernest, by helping us do the vetting, helping us to do the contract, because we don't know what to put in the contract, what not, helping us to collect the money, I think does a great service. Two things. Of one, you need extra income, and you need a companion.
Yes.
And talk to, and you can define. I had at some point a roommate, and was a housemate, and she barely spoke. She always stayed in her room. She was just there for a couple of months. She didn't break. Now that was great for me. I have a big circle of friends. I didn't really want to talk to her, okay? But I could define what I wanted. Now you may want someone who goes to the movies with you and you have dinner occasionally. So being able to define what kind of housemate or apartment mate you want, that, and someone who you feel, you know, from an integrity point of view, you feel safe with, that someone can help you with this, because it's hard to do that on your own. So I think Silvernest provides a wonderful service, especially for older women. And as I said, I'm staying with a friend of mine who has an Airbnb, and I have helped to clean these rooms and change the sheets, as I'm a good friend of hers. This is a hassle, you know.
Yes.
And you have to, you know, there's all kinds of, you know, work involved. And then, you know, she does some of the meals, and they're in and out, and it's different people. And, you know, so that's one way to do it. But I do definitely see the benefits of someone who's there, you know, maybe has a 2-year agreement with you, and you're not having to do the in and out of, you know, strangers all the time.
I want to just, for my last question for our conversation today, the folks who are watching this are coming together and discussing these topics. So in many ways, what they're doing is coming together in resiliency circles. So the community leadership program for Silvernest is a resiliency circle. So I'd love to hear you just provide for all the listeners a little bit about your perceptions and your experience of what your resiliency circles have been like, and how people responded to them.
So mine started without a name. It was a group of women coming together, talking about what had happened to us. And there's a big relief in being able to not fake normal and pretend you're all right when you're not all right. All of these women were resourceful in different ways. So there were different kinds of information that we were able to share with each other through our own, you know, what services are available, how do you get help, what do you do in this situation or that one. And that made all the difference, because we spoke really candidly. This was not where you had to have some mask on. When I wrote the book, I thought it was important for other people to have that experience as well. Because if you are in a place of despair, it's hard for you to feel empowered. It's hard for you to sort of feel you have what it takes to go another round. There is help there that I am hoping then allows us to stand in the power that we actually have, given how many of us there are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Fantastic. Elizabeth White, thank you so much for bringing such clarity and honesty and vulnerability and solutions to all of us as we go forward. It's such an honor to have you.